Welcome to the Stockout. We're here on Monday after 4th of July weekend, hoping to help you shake the sand out of your sneakers. Good to see you, Grace. So today we're going to talk about the hurricane and impacts that we're seeing so far. Talking about SAKS acquiring Neiman Marcus. Thought that was interesting. And then some interesting takes about Kroger and Albertsons. And then maybe we'll talk a little bit about Sam's Club as a follow-on to what you just talked about with Kaylee. So a lot of good stuff, mostly on the retail side, I would say today. This is a show about retail and CPG, but we'll try to work in some insights for CPG as well.
Yeah, excited. Well, I guess we're going to start off with hurricanes. Not so exciting stuff today, at least first thing, right off the bat.
Yeah, so I was following this over the weekend and then looked at it again this morning. And I guess my initial take this morning is that, well, maybe this wasn't quite as severe as maybe people were expecting, at least not in the U.S. I mean, it really ripped some devastation across some of these Caribbean countries like Jamaica. So feel bad for those countries. But when you sort of look at the sonar chart that we have on the critical events map, which anyone who's a sonar subscriber can go to critical events, look at kind of where it is, sort of track, where your assets are. Seems to have hit about 85 or 100 miles southwest of Houston. Did make landfall as a Category 1, expected to weaken as it moves, inland. I think it was maybe a benefit that didn't hit Houston directly. Hitting it, that distance, I think makes a big difference. And the fact that it hit as a Category 1 there's the critical events chart. So it's an interactive chart that you can look at on sonar. Over the weekend, we're talking about it being a Category 4 or 5. Hitting landfall. So I think that was a positive thing. There were about 1,300 flights canceled, about 750,000 people have lost power. Some of these coastal cities are we're asking people to evacuate a lot of the services in Harris County. Harris County includes Houston, where they had closures. And one of the interesting things I saw was that the Texas Lieutenant Governor said that traffic was flowing freely out of the Houston area, which he thought was a concern because a lot of people didn't seem to be taking the evacuation calls seriously. You do wonder as the hurricane season goes on if there will be a lot of these situations and people just kind of grow numb to it. And you could get into a situation where when the big one comes, not enough people evacuate. I mean, that seems almost kind of sadly inevitable. The railroads, the Class 1 railroads, Union Pacific and BNSF did put out service advisories on their web pages. Union Pacific suspended operations yesterday, Sunday evening through Monday evening. BNSF began restricting operations in its Houston complex, which spans 60 square miles and includes 5 rail yards. They stopped in-gating at the Pearland intermodal facility in Houston. I don't think that the CPKC, which also has a lot of operations in Houston, makes their service alerts public. So those have a big impact on railroads, and the railroads have to sort of stop in-gating. And then oftentimes they would have to inspect the track to make sure there's no defects or potentially correct those defects before sending trains over the track. Because a lot of times derailments, it's because of damage to the track. And one thing that also strikes me is just that all these indications still is calling for a rough hurricane season. This National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has predicted really active hurricane season with 17 to 25 named storms during the season. And what also stands out is that this Hurricane Beryl was both Category 4 and 5 at different periods of time, and that was the earliest of a Category 5, I guess, in this season. Typically doesn't ramp up until late July or August. So it's kind of a inauspicious sign. We also do have a sonar chart showing tender rejections out of Houston, and so you do see that the market, the freight market, seeming to maybe react to this, although it had been rising in Houston since the beginning of June. Usually Houston tender rejection rate is a little less than the national average. Now it's a little bit higher, but you haven't seen any huge spikes, and maybe that's just because this wasn't quite as severe as people were anticipating, but certainly could have impacts to particularly the chemical and petroleum industry. So much of that is down in the Gulf Coast and the rail lines, like I mentioned. Grace, do you have a lot of experience dealing with hurricanes when you were in brokerage?
Yeah, a lot of the experience was a little bit more on the like rebuilding side of things, working with more of the materials, lumber companies in particular, and of course getting prepared for the season as a whole. Which for the brokers out there, biggest thing, right? Have been, especially in this economy, start running credit, make sure that those raw material companies that maybe you work with that might see some growth are able to pay their bills at the same time. But a lot of them will likely have deeper conversations with you in regards to credits and in that regard. But it is interesting. You brought up like the traffic fact, and I guess this one, of course, died down to a category one, but it does concern me. I've got relatives in Florida, and they always kind of joke around like the rest of us panic about the hurricane season, but they've gone through so many themselves that they kind of have this routine about it, right? Kind of like you said, it's just kind of maybe numb to the fact that that's coming, but all it's going to take, unfortunately, is one mistake, and that's there. I guess one act of God that could change that around. So. I'm hoping that maybe a little bit of that uptick is people preparing, right? We're maybe seeing like companies being protective of their assets and making sure if they're not in that area during potential hurricane storms. But it was thankful that this died down. But there, what we'll see, I think, is I want to say like Crowley and a few other a little bit more larger freight or logistics providers out there. I know work a lot more in that like Caribbean region when it comes to
Mhm.
FEMA loads. So I'm sure we're going to see some uptick in their activity. But dodge this one. But I think it's just the beginning, and so we're going to see more and more of these, and of course we'll likely still talk about some hurricanes throughout the summer on the show as well.
Yeah, so it does beg the question. I mean, if you're a shipper, because this show is targeted at shippers, and you have facilities in, let's say, the Houston area or areas in Florida that are prone to hurricanes. I mean, does it make sense to move sort of critical components, critical inventory sort of out of those regions to someplace that's just safer so it doesn't impact your supply chain as much?
I would say so. Like I would be trying to at least maybe potentially and not completely rearrange it, but at least maybe focus more of the facilities or warehouses closer to Dallas, right? Getting out of that storm area, but understanding as well. Like that's the interesting thing about the CPG companies in particular is when these situations happen, that's actually the type of that's what consumers are probably buying is more of that CPG related goods. So you want to position yourself right in a spot where you aren't seeing a huge damage with your own goods, but that you are in quickly can get your goods to some of these emergency sites if need be. So it must be an interesting time to be a CPG planner right now because yeah, you have to kind of juggle that experience of well, we don't want to position ourselves to take a huge hit when this happens, but no, like water, shampoo, right? Like some of these day-to-day necessities are what people are going to be needing if something does hit as well.
Yeah, for sure. Might want to ramp up on some of these inventory levels for those guys. Want to move on to the next topic here, which I thought there was an interesting news story over the weekend. The SAKS owner agreed to acquire Neiman Marcus. So you're going to have a acquisition of two retail department store titans. This is something been speculated for a long time. So this will end up being a $2.65 billion deal. They're still going to operate with the existing brand names. I don't know if they're planning to close any stores. It doesn't sound like it. And then what's interesting is that the main public comparable is Macy's, which had a nice bounce on Friday. It was up 9.5%. I think we have a stock chart on Macy's. So Macy's also owns Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's. So they actually do compete directly with those more luxury-oriented department stores. So Wall Street seemed to like the fact that the industry is getting more consolidated. It's already fairly consolidated when you think about how many of those brands are under just certain umbrellas. The company's going to be called SAKS Global. Will be run by its current CEO, which I saw that Britton Ladd, our friend, gave him a nice vote of confidence on LinkedIn. He always has opinions on who should be running which companies, so he liked that one. So long negotiation, speculations would be happen for years. The combined company has about 10 billion in annual sales. And what's interesting is it's actually dwarfed by the sales of LVMH. That's the company that owns Louis Vuitton, among many other luxury brands, that has sales of 94 billion. I'm always astounded by the size of that company. Like, it's one of the largest European companies. Salesforce is a minority shareholder. And what's interesting is Amazon is taking a minority investment in this company as part of the deal. So that was maybe the thing that stood out the most to me. So I guess the question is, what do you think Amazon is doing? So what do you think the justification is that Amazon would want a minority investment in SAKS Global?
Uh, I will say, considering like the potential this could have on more of the e-commerce experience, and even more so the inventory aspect, and more so, from a consumer perspective, I'd say like the visibility of what's available. I am really excited about this. I mean, it's interesting. Like sometimes before our events and stuff, I shop online, right? And you're looking around, and I've never enjoyed some at least those two's experience shopping online. They're very much stores, and I think because of how they're set up too, they want you to come in store to shop, and that's a good experience. And I think more luxury brands get the opportunity to do that a little bit more. But for those who do shop online, I remember like trying to find on Amazon like nice dress pants, things of that nature, and there's these brands that you don't trust, you've never heard of. It's kind of like that Shein experience where you're like, if I'm going to purchase this, I'm not going to spend too much money. So I know that Amazon has kind of created some of its own luxury brand in terms of clothing in particular. So I'm excited to see like how maybe we start to see Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth, maybe not on the Amazon platform. I think it'll get to that point, but create a better e-commerce experience and see what their online sales start to turn into. And I mean, I think Amazon's seller platforms, right? These like opportunities for people to buy things online and review them, and you're starting to see celebrities do that as well, has gotten huge. So to add this type of luxury items, I think to that experience will be helpful as well. So yeah, I'm as someone like I said, who's used Amazon to try to find more upscale luxury items, clothing. I mean, even other things that they sell within those stores, right? Like it's never really hit on the Amazon platform. So I'm excited to see if maybe we start to see those combine, and we get a more luxury experience through Amazon as well. But even on the opposite side, maybe more visibility and a better e-commerce experience directly on Neiman Marcus and Saks sites in particular too.
Yeah, one thing I wonder about with this is, are these stores just going to carry less inventory in the stores? Like, are the
Yeah,
stores themselves just going to be basically showrooms? You go in there, you find what you want roughly, but they probably don't have it in your size, maybe they don't have it in the right color, but it doesn't really matter because Amazon is the back office. We'll ship that to you next day because it's somewhere in the
exactly.
greater area, or maybe because their service is so strong. You go to the other part of the mall, watch a movie, come back, and it's there in the store. So it seems like
Yeah.
there may be some interesting possibilities there to essentially outsource all the back office.
100%. I think that's something we'll definitely see. I mean, I would hope to God we start to see that with Amazon involved with it, right? Just like you said, I mean, the opportunity to say, well, I'd love to have this in purple. Well, give us, 2 hours and we'll deliver it at your doorstep. So, or we'll bring it here on site. But yeah, that's, I think, the type of experience I'd like to see more out of the luxury side of some of these stores as well.
Yeah, and then the other question I think that comes up while we're on this topic is, notice that luxury spending was down about 8% last year. Easy to see why. It was in all those categories that are so-called aspirational, that are not quite the very high end, but kind of with logos that people wear to kind of feel wealthy, I guess. So do you think these department stores are still relevant, or are the brands sort of holding all the cards because I know like the mall near me, it's like all these brands have their own stores, and it's like they have all these luxury branded stores, and that seems to be where it's going.
I think because of their, I mean, it's funny like what came first in the situation. Like I think because of their poor experience online, they have been becoming a little bit less relevant, right? Like, I mean, even thinking about some of the ads that I see on social media, like I rarely see some of these more luxury items in particular. And I think if we start to see more of an Amazon experience with them, I think especially the younger generations are going to jump on that a little bit more. I mean, a lot of our spending in particular comes from seeing celebrities wear these outfits, and a lot of times, especially like there's sites that will literally like break down some celebrity outfits and where what brands actually made them. But it's, well, how do I actually like find these brands and purchase them? A lot of them will go to Google, but to say, oh, I'm going to go to Neiman Marcus is like the last thing that we want to do. So I think that we'll see maybe with a better e-commerce experience, some of these more middle class, even generational younger generations starting to purchase more of these items in particular. And I mean, if that does happen, I think I'd be uh, maybe a little bit more concerned as like a company like Shein, where it's like, okay, well, it was tough for me to access some of these goods in the past or shop the way that I wanted to with some of these luxury brands. But now that the opportunity is there, now that they're leveraging someone like Amazon who can deliver to me in a couple of days, will I still buy cheap and fast, right? So we start already see people especially middle class, still splurging on some of these types of goods. I think we're going to continue to see that. Maybe you're spending less at the grocery store, but you now have an opportunity to spend more at Neiman Marcus. I mean, that might be an opportunity that our generation and more of the middle class takes as well. So again, I think just thinking about some of these more luxury stores, the stores that back when we used to like walk around the mall, like that was like an afternoon experience when I was a kid, right? That we just like couldn't afford. But now it's accessible, and I might have saved some money for it. I think that visibility and that faster supply chain could actually help with a lot of them over time.
Well said there. Want to move on to the next topic here. There's some interesting discourse last few days about the Kroger Albertsons potential merger. We've talked about this merger a lot in the past. Kroger's trying to acquire Albertsons. The FTC is suing to stop the merger. It's being challenged in the courts. The FTC is concerned about that it'll increase prices, retail prices, and bring down wages. That the wages portion of it is something that is unusual. The FTC is usually just concerned about prices and what that does to the consumer. But some interesting discourse over the weekend. So does one Georgetown professor named John Mayo argues that he actually thinks the retail prices could come down, which is something that Kroger has said that they expect too. And the justification is a lower distribution cost that'll be passed on. And he sort of takes this approach of sort of an academic that says, well, if when there's mergers in very high concentrated markets, that does end up increasing the prices to the consumers. But when the market is relatively fragmented, it'll end up reducing the cost, because there's smaller companies that merge will improve their efficiencies. They'll keep costs low or prices low to compete with the larger competitors. And it seems like he thinks that's the case here. Certainly considers Walmart, Costco, Amazon / Whole Foods to be competitors, very strong competitors in grocery. And so he didn't see any problem with the companies merging. Did say that there's been academic research in the past on grocery mergers, and that's what it sort of showed, which is sort of these smaller markets where there's really not a lot of options. That sometimes then you see higher prices, but in the markets that have all the competitors, there's not much impact. You do wonder at some point if those prices diverge too much, if that attracts regulators' attention, if they're just charging rural customers more because they can you think that could probably give rise to an FTC lawsuit at some point. And then there was also another interesting take I saw from a guy named Scott Moses, who's a partner at Solomon Partners. Seemed very knowledgeable, experience working with companies in the space. And he seemed very confident. This was on Bloomberg. He seemed very confident that the deal would be approved. Didn't see any reason why it wouldn't be, and rattled off all these statistics about how strong CNS is, which CNS is the company that is acquiring or is planning to acquire a certain number of divested stores in markets where there was a lot of overlap between Kroger and Albertsons. CNS currently holds distributor of groceries, very experienced in the space. And stat he has is also that grocery stores are about 36% market share of groceries, and the balance are discounters and non-traditional grocers are 64% of groceries and rising fast. So that's really the market landscape you have to take into consider when you're looking at this deal. And another point he made is I guess some of the unions liked the acquisition, and the reason is that Albertsons is for sale and will end up being sold no matter what, whether this deal is approved or not. And those unions would rather have it be sold to another union competitor, which is Kroger, versus having it acquired by Amazon or non-union retailer. So thought all those things were interesting. So I guess the CPG companies, if you agree with either of those individuals, should be ready for Kroger, Albertsons to approach them as one customer, and that would cost another 10%, customer in many cases after Walmart, which a lot of the CPG companies will list Walmart as being a 10% customer, and that's their only 10% customer. Well, now they probably have a second one. Any new thoughts on this deal?
That's a good point on the 10% customer aspect. I didn't really consider that. I mean, yeah, that's would likely happen, right, if this does occur. And I agree kind of with the Amazon statement, more so even growing that into what we've seen out of Walmart. I mean, Costco, right, could be, I think, lead to a more disruptive powerhouse if that were to be. I am interested in Britain's thought process on if CNS is really a competitor, because I mean, at the end of the day, I still think that they're going to, if this does go through, they still have some huge competition between Amazon and Walmart. And we might even get into it in a second, but there's, I think, some really interesting plays with those two that'll keep Kroger and Albertsons still on its toes in that regards too. So, I'm interested from your thought, question to you, Mike. If we were talking about a situation where Amazon was to be grabbing Albertsons, do you think that there would be as much of a debate as the Kroger Albertsons deal, if not more?
Yeah, it might be even more of a debate if Amazon was going to be acquiring them. I think the risk now is that Amazon just gets to be where we buy everything from, and it gets to be kind of almost a monopoly, just because they're everywhere, and it just gets and all of these things get bundled together. Kind of like you had with Microsoft. A lot of just the FTC is already suing Amazon for the way it treats its marketplace sellers, and they could add to that the way they're treating grocery suppliers too. So it might even prompt a more aggressive response from the FTC and the FTC's chairman, that Lena Khan. I mean, she did her thesis in school about Amazon and how it the monopoly sort of reinforces itself, and that they're abusing this monopoly position. So I think it would add more fuel to the fire there.
Yeah.
But we have about a minute left. Would encourage people to go back and listen to your comments with Kaylee on Sam's Club. I guess Gen Z starting to use Sam's Club, which maybe is a little bit surprising. But I guess my question would be, how do you think Gen Z would rank the various aspects of a retailer, if you consider sort of the having the lowest price, having the best product selection, having the most convenience? Where do you think they fall?
I think Sam's Club is starting to become a big option. Clearly, we see it from the statistics over The last 2 years, Gen Z membership has grown 63%, millennials 14%. And I really, which is also interesting, is a big part of the go-to is the technology, the ability to go into the store, scan everything, pay for it, and leave, and not have to wait in line. Which, if you look at the response for the Walmart aspect, which is funny, you're talking Sam's Club, Walmart pulling back and saying you have to be a Plus member in order to get that. I think the big uproar came more from the Gen Zs, millennials, than it came from boomers or any other group. We're actually, I think, might prefer the other way around. So I think it's that experience, right? I think it's, of course, the cost savings. We want to splurge in other places. So, hey, where can I get toilet paper at the very least? That mixture combined, I think it makes Sam's Club a really good choice. And if they can continue to compete against Costco, it's going to be between those two as well. And I think that tech helps bring them into the Sam's Club decision over the Costco decision over time too. So yeah, if you guys want, like you said, go check that out on our YouTube page. You'll see that up, a chat between me and Kaylee, and we get deeper into that as well. But of course, join our community. Head to freightwaves.com, click on newsletters at the top of the page, join our community so you can get a wonderful newsletter from Mike every week near the end of the week too. And then, of course, until then, we'll be back next week with a whole new episode, back into the summer swing of things. And other than that, thank you guys for joining the community, and we'll talk with you next week.